بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم أبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Last week we were discussing the isti'adha, and we finished talking about isti'adha, various different things regarding it, what it actually means. Every single word actually we discussed, and in what situation we should be applying it. Now we start with the basmala, which is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So like we mentioned before, isti'adha means A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim, the phrase. Basmala is the term used to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So whenever we're referring to the phrase, we say it as the basmala. And why do they have these terms? Because it's easier than just to say every time Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim when you're referring to it. Like don't forget to recite the basmala instead of don't forget to recite Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, things like that. So basmala. This is the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha. So he states here that the Sahaba wrote the Quran. When they were writing the Quran, in the very beginning they have the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the basmala. And he's saying all scholars agree that it is a part of an ayah found in Surah Al-Naml. Surah Al-Naml has Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as part of an ayah. Why is he mentioning this? Because of the difference of opinion that's going to be mentioned later on. Is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayah or not? There's a difference of opinion among scholars whether this is an ayah of Quran. And if so, what are the implications, and is it an ayah for every surah, etc. But every single alim states that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of an ayah found in Surah Al-Naml, and that is in the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam and the queen of Saba, Bilqis. And so he sends a letter to her, and when she finds out what the letter contains, she's talking to her ministers. And she says, Innahu min Sulaiman wa innahu Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Indeed, it is from Sulaiman, and indeed, it is in the name of Allah, most merciful, most mercy-giving. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of an ayah. As you heard a little bit before, that is other words. So now everyone agrees that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is part of one ayah. There's no difference of opinion there. And that's why, anyone know how many, there's 114 surahs in the Quran, but how many times is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim mentioned in the Quran? Does anyone know? 115? Okay. 113? Okay. 114? So the brother's right, 114. It's not 115, it's not 113. Because there is a surah in the Quran that doesn't have the basmala. And that is Surah Al-Bara'ah, Surah Al-Tawbah. It starts without Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The surah before it finishes, and then Bara'atu min Allah. The surah starts without basmala. However, because the basmala is found in Namal in the beginning and part of an ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is 114 times in the Quran. So everyone agrees to that, Imam Ibn Kathir states. Now he's going to talk about ثُمَّ اخْتَلَفُوا. However, there's a difference of opinion. And so one good thing about Tafsir Ibn Kathir is he will mention all these differences of opinion and we'll be able to hear them. He says, هل هي آية مستقلة في أول كل سورة أو من أول كل سورة كتبت في أولها أو أنها بعض آية من كل سورة. So he says there's a difference of opinion. Is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayah by itself that is found in the beginning of every surah? So now they have a difference of opinion. First of all, is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayah? And then is it part of the surahs, or is it something separate but found in the beginning? So that's one opinion. Like, let's say Surah Al-Baqarah, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's not part of Baqarah, but it is an ayah, but it's in the beginning of Baqarah. So that's one opinion. The other opinion is, it is from the beginning, it's from every surah, it's part of every surah, and it's written in the beginning of every surah. So there's another opinion that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is the first ayah of every surah. That's another opinion. So it's 113 surahs have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as their first ayah, except for Bara'ah, Surah At-Tawbah. أو أنها بعض آية من كل سورة. Or is it a part of an ayah from every surah? Meaning, it's like mixed in with the first ayah or something like that. So these are different opinions that he mentions here. He's going to start mentioning which imams, etc. He goes in depth, so I will skip over some of the names. He mentions like 30 different names of Sahaba and Tabi'un who had this view. So he says, among those who state that it is an ayah of every surah except for Tawbah, it's Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Ibn Zubayr, Abu Huraira, Ali. Amongst the Tabi'een, Ata, Tawus, Sa'id ibn Jubair, Makhul, Zuhri, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Al-Shafi'i is their view, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. All of them agree that this is in the beginning of every surah. It's an ayah from every surah except for Bara'ah. So Imam Al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, they say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is an ayah that's part of every surah. So when you start Baqarah, ayah number 1 is actually Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And so there's actually a difference of opinion regarding Surah Al-Fatiha. Everyone agrees there's 7 ayahs because we said in the Quran Allah refers to it as the 7 oft-repeated ones. So everyone agrees that Fatiha has 7 ayahs. But then there's a disagreement after that. What are the 7 ayahs? So according to Imam Shafi'i, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is ayah number 1. And then the last ayah, صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين is 1 ayah. And according to Imam Abu Hanifa and others, Bismillah is not an ayah. It's not the first ayah. But صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, there's an ayah there. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين is another ayah. So it still makes 7. So everyone agrees it's 7, but there's a difference of opinion. What does it, matter in our practical lives? It doesn't, but it's a scholarly thing. They disagreed on these different things. So then, there's all this differences of opinion. Then he says, قال مالك وأبو حنيفة وأصحابهما. Imam Malik as well as Imam Abu Hanifa are in agreement here. They say, ليست آية من الفاتحة. It's not an ayah of Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is not an ayah. Which is why you will see that the Hanafis, and I assume Malikiya, they will not read Bismillah out loud in the Salah. Right? If someone who's Hanafi is leading Salah, like myself, you won't hear me saying Bismillah out loud. Whereas if Imam Shafi'i, a follower of Imam Shafi'i, if he leads the Salah, you'll hear him reciting Bismillah. Because according to them, Bismillah is an ayah of Fatiha. And according to the Hanafis, Bismillah is not an ayah of Fatiha. So it's not going to be read out loud. So this is why. So Imam Malik is of that view as well. They say, لَيْسَتْ آيَةً مِنَ الْفَاتِحَةِ وَلَا مِنْ غَيْرِهَا مِنَ السُّوَرِ. It's not an ayah of other surahs as well. So it's not the first ayah of Fatiha, it's not the first ayah of Baqarah, it's not the first ayah of Al Imran, it's not the first ayah of any surah, according to them. Rather, there's a difference then, like, is it a separate ayah that is used to show the one surah is done and another starts? Or it's not even that. So a lot of differences regarding Surah Al-Fatiha. I'm sorry, the Basmala. The Basmala. Okay. Now, there's another issue after that, which is built on this one. Do you read Bismillah out loud or not? Which is what I just alluded to. So that will be based off of whether Bismillah is a surah or is part of the surah or not. If it's not part of the surah, you're not going to read it out loud, because you only read the Quran out loud. We don't say Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa tabaraka ismuk. We don't say that out loud. It's not Quran. So the Bismillah, if it's part of the surah, you're going to read it out loud. If it's not, then you won't. So according to their opinion, he's going to also mention the proofs. So what are the proofs of these imams? And he shows proofs of both sides. We're not going to, then a further debate is, when you're studying in a seminary, they will, depending on the inclination of the seminary, so if it's a predominantly Hanafi or predominantly Shafi'i, they will support their view and they will debate with the other scholars and show why their proof is stronger. What he's not going to do is just going to give you some proofs. So he says, do you read it out loud or not? فَأَمَّا الْجَهْرُ بِهَا فِي الصَّلَاةِ فَمَنْ رَأَى أَنَّهَا لَيْسَتْ مِنَ الْفَاتِحَةِ فَلَا يَجْهَرُ بِهَا. Those who see that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is not part of Fatiha, they will not read it out loud. Meaning the Malikis and the Hanafis, they will not read Bismillah out loud. The Hanbalis and the Shafi'is, they will read it out loud. And everyone has their own proofs, and we respect all the madhabs. If I come here and I say the Hanafi madhab is the haqq and it is what is true and what is revealed from Allah, and the other madhabs are wrong, then that's a lie. I don't have that knowledge. Neither does anyone. Even the imams themselves, they said, they all have this like sentiment, all the four imams. Their sentiment is, my view is correct, but I'm wrong. It's possible that I made a mistake. But I feel like I'm correct. Otherwise, why would he have that view? Why would you pick a view that you think is wrong? So no one really knows 100%. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not forcing us to know the exact ruling. There's another issue altogether. Am I out of time? How much time do I have left? 2 minutes or something? There's another opinion, or another view, is not part of this. Is there only one truth, or is there multiple truths? So there's a difference on that too. So it's not like Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came and said that, the views of fiqh, there's only one reality to it. In fact, we have proofs supporting that multiple views are permitted in Islam. If you have multiple views, it's going to be permitted. And I really enjoyed this one hadith where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told the Sahaba, he said, go to one place. He sent some Sahaba as a contingent, go to this area. When you reach there, perform salah. So they were traveling and it took them longer than expected. The time for salah actually came in and was going to finish before they reached their destination. Half of the Sahaba said that the time for salah is here, we need to pray. The other half said, but he told us that once you get there, perform the salah. So we're not going to pray till we get there. So the first half, what is their proof? Their proof is, what he meant is you would reach there in time. He didn't factor in the fact that you would be delayed. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was assuming we would get there in time, and obviously when the time comes in, you perform salah. However, now that we're delayed, we have to pray salah because it's time. What's the other group's proof? The words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said this, that's what's going to happen. So then they were broken into two groups. Some of them prayed, some of them waited till they got to their place. When they came back and they told Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam about what happened, because they had a difference of opinion, they would always do this. They would come back and resort to him. He said both are right. So now both are right. Why? Because they used their judgment in that. And so some took the words literally and some took them figuratively. So there is no one that can say, okay, one person is 100% right or one's 100% wrong. But what we can say is that these are legitimate scholars who have studied for their entire lives, and they've spent their lives trying to understand the Sharia, so they are worthy of following. They are worthy of us understanding their opinions. Hence why Imam Ibn Kathir mentions their opinions, as well as you can hear many other scholars' names before them. So he mentions Sahaba, he mentions Tabi'in, and then he mentions the four great Imams as well. So we're going to mention some of this. So sometimes I like to skip over these fiqhi masail. Sometimes it's enlightening. I feel like maybe you learn something, as to why people do what they do. And this should not cause enmity. This should not cause one person, if you come from a society or a community that doesn't read Bismillah out loud, now you go to another one, they say Bismillah, you just break your salah and leave. What is this? Some people do that because they've never been exposed. Sometimes even with the qira'at, because that's even less exposure. So someone has never heard Ya Musa or Ya Musa. So then either if they're really outraged, they'll break their salah and run away. Or if they're less outraged, after the salah they'll stand up and say, what's wrong with the imam? I've never heard this in my life. What is this? I don't want my children listening to this nonsense. He doesn't realize he's talking about the Quran. And this is how the Quran was revealed in various ways. So we have to be very careful. And if we don't have knowledge, we need to ask. The proper method would be approaching the imam after. Is there a reason why you recited like this? I've never heard this before. And then he's like, no, I felt like it because, Musa, I don't like I like it sounds cool. Then you can throw a fit at the imam. What's wrong with you? You're altering Quran. So we need some knowledge before we act. So inshallah, I'll just leave it here and I'll look over it because he goes in depth, and I'll summarize it tomorrow inshallah, and then he goes into the virtues of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He features a hadith there. And then he talks about the fact that it's good to recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in the beginning of every good action. So we talked about surah, or rather the isti'adha, and how the isti'adha should be used. It should be used in times of fear, in times of being, seduced by the machinations of shaitan, in times of anger. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim should be used in other times. So these are adhkar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to talk about when to use them as well. We're going to pause here and continue tomorrow. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, after the remaining salah, we'll start our Arba'in fi usul al-Din program. وصلي على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا. Chapter of dhikr, which was quite and that was to worship. I'm going to be talking about, it's not necessarily ibadah in itself. Then after these 10 is about like actions. However, to 29 are going to be about positive traits. So that's basically the Arba'in, regarding negative traits and how to remove them, and 10 regarding positive. He says the halal really, and this he adds on to ibadah, work you earn halal money, that's a thing, etc. Your ibadah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to us some portion from there. You get someone who earns some 80, some 70, some get like 1/10. So if we have our and what you selling alcohol, etc., those kind of things, and your sustenance is halal, there's also other factors. Are you paying attention? Are you focused on very pertinent things that he's going to mention? He's going to mention an ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is not filthy and good for you, will impact righteous or eating wholesome food, physical, is it healthy on the ibadah? It's going to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I feel like I'm engaged in my ibadah nowadays. I used to feel rich, now we're being a little bit late nowadays. I used to feel rich, now we're being a little bit late. So the haram aspect, which is wholesome food. We don't see him consuming honey non-stop. Rather, that's the physical component. The physical component will physically, you will be able to physically engage in ibadah. Cholesterol, they can't fast anymore. Some of us might think, you don't have to fast. State that they can't even enjoy food anymore. The physical aspect of tayyibat, which is actual food, it'll be very difficult to Taraweeh. Becomes extremely encompassing and concise. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم طلب الحلال, reported to have said, seeking out halal is, meaning after iman and salah. So things in the life of a Muslim: Iman and then Salah. It's really important. This is fard. It's a commandment from Allah. And we as a slave must, they were saying that, now it's winter. Salatul Maghrib. Or Maghrib come back. But now there's no real way that I can give you a concession for this. But I said, at the end of the day, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more to do the qada if you're going to miss it. But on Yawm al-Qiyamah, prepare, you can let them know, you can gather the Muslims. This is how serious we should be in Islam. If it's part of your job, if it comes to it, then that's what it takes, then to be magnified. So we should, eating halal is extremely important. نَوَّرَ اللَّهُ قَلْبَهُ زَهَّدَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيا. So what is the benefit and reward of eating halal? Halal for 40 days. Allah will enlighten their heart. The heart becomes enlightened, flow from their heart, and they'll get ilham. Something maybe you've experienced. You would look in the deeper thing, different things, and extract different types. He or she who eats halal for 40 days, Allah will enlighten their heart, will cause them to become zahid or ascetic in dunya. Unfortunately, we're so involved in dunya, we'd be like, why would I want this? After this dunya, please make me such that I should. You might be thinking, I eat halal, small amounts of haram everywhere. If it's not like we have to call, we have to find it, Allah will forgive you. But you're not going to get this type of ni'mah from Allah. You also pour on those plants, eat that for 40 days, in small amounts of things in our food. Your money is free from riba, but it's going to be filthy somehow. So they're probably having this. They're eating these pure halal food. When I was in Bangladesh, rice was from his rice. Ingredients was around his house. I don't know if I've ever had a more... Those type of people, perhaps, they have this. But in our times, we're just buying... Inna lillahi ta'ala malakan ala Baytul Maqdis. Baytul Maqdis. This is talking about Baytul Maqdis. There's an angel over Baytul Maqdis. It's a warning. It's an angel. Accept his nafal nor his fard. So Allah won't accept from you. You ate haram. So he calls it darahim wa fi thamanihi dirhamun haram. Anyone who has purchased haram, in that 10 dirhams, there is he is wearing that cloth. So if he's wearing that, since I'm wearing this haram garment, I'm just not going to pray anymore. Allah's not going to accept it. You still have to, those are two different things. As for the extra reward, which is grace from Allah, he's going to cut down. So this is a warning. It's very scary. Sadaqah, or perhaps you give sadaqat of the amount. Okay. Almost لم يقبل الله ذلك منكم إلا مرسنا بعمر رضي الله عنه. You perform so much salat. That's how much you've utilized your body for out of the amount. And thin, like a string. Allah will not accept. So he says, stay away from haram. Now, this is not keep that up. The whole thing is stay away from the haram. For some, you need to do more. Salah, no tahajjud, no extra fasts. It counts in the negative. Pray that. Then you'd become a wali of Allah, where we could become great in the sight of Allah. We just want to just make it. So he quotes one acts of worship. Whilst eating haram, build a building, the foundation has to be really well fortified, even stronger. They have to pack the soil, fickle, something that's going to be weak, has to be very strong. The foundation, just think of pyramids or the Burj Khalifa, it gets haram and then does ibadah, it's just going to slide off and just... It's filth, it's najis. Nothing's going to happen. 5 times a day performing salah. Fasting the entire month of Ramadan. At least it's just nothing. You're just at 0. Even that's good. You're at 0. So far in the negatives. So this is real taqwa. Real taqwa is not like Ramadan, but they would avoid the haram to practice what has been said.